Welcome back to the Win with Dice podcast, a podcast featuring members of the Win with Dice team. I'm Calvin, and I'm joined here by Ramon.
What up, you beautiful nerds? This is the Win with Dice podcast. We're here to tell you about stuff and things. Great intro.
That is
good job, Ramon.
I mean, to be fair, that is certainly the aim of every podcast, is to tell you about things, just various things. The particular things that we want to tell you about are all about playing in and running tabletop RPG games, our experiences with such, and any sort of information that we can hopefully pass on to people who might be nervous about hopping onto the other side of the screen. We try to take a casual approach to tabletop games to make them a bit less mysterious for folks who might want to give running a game a try.
Thanks for the save, Calvin.
We really should write down
this is why it's
a script or something, because we kind of say this every episode.
Never.
Okay.
Never, ever. Okay, it'll take away the polish and the shine of the show, right?
It is part of the charm.
It's that low budget quality that people like. That's what they keep coming back.
Yeah, I have to imagine that's it.
So bad.
A lot of big stuff happened this week. Like our first ever gaming stream. Maybe we could talk a bit about that after the tip of the week. But yeah, I was really excited for that. Hopefully we can do a lot more of those in the future. I don't know, you have any thing you want to say before we go into the actual show?
No, let's jump into the Win with Dice weekly GM tip of the week. I don't know why I could do that, but I can't just say hello.
It's because hello is too plain.
Yeah.
Doing the loud stuff is easier.
Shouting is where I find my my bread and butter. Okay, so yes, the enough rambling. The Win with Dice weekly GM tip of the week. Straight to you folks, giving you the good stuff up top. Hopefully it's useful to you. And so kind of pertinent to the I guess I should say the maybe the theme of this episode. I don't know what we're going to talk to a little bit later. So it's like, does your games have like laws and rulers and kingdoms and all sorts of that stuff? Or is it just set in the middle of the nowhere or the wilderness? And even if so, it's like, you can't really escape those kind of politics, even though you're out in the boonies. I mean, people like will just show up and try to tell you what to do. And like trying to like have that kind of like high politics in a game could be overwhelming, just like, having kingdoms fight each other or like whatever. But the tip I want to give you guys is that, you could have like your high powers. You could have like treaties and different embargoes or whatever, that kind of governmental stuff, going on like above the players. But you have to kind of like translate that down to one or two people. So like, you might not meet the king, right? Depending on how big of a kingdom it is, or like the emperor or whatever, who runs the civilized portion of your world. But you could have like a representative, right? Like the local sheriff, or like, maybe like a lower noble, maybe like a land baron, like somebody who claims the land and is wondering why a bunch of adventurers are running around it. And like, maybe their mission's a little bit more politically driven. Like maybe they want you to drive out the goblins because they want to expand, and it's like they can't really set up any towns or whatever, is because there's goblins in the area, so they hired a bunch of adventurers to go root them out. Or maybe they're plan to steal something for a rival a noble person to give that kind of weird politics, or like that kind of stuff. That's like my advice, is to try and find, you can have a bunch of high politics going on, and then you could have like the players like climb the ladder of like bureaucracy, meeting higher and higher officials until like they're face to face with the emperor or whatever of your world. But you can still do a lot with on the local level, and you could be really impactful to a town, which could have like it will translate, and you could have that little microcosm of your world explain like the bigger picture of what's going on. So yeah, that's my GM tip of the week.
Yeah, the politics stuff doesn't have to be all the high level things. You can just really work with the smaller stuff, and it is kind of inevitable that some sort of or some sort of rules will be established, even if the rule is total chaos. Something is going to happen. Some sort of society is going to be established in some area.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, that is going to tie into what we're talking about, because we did want to talk about, like, you know, politics in games, you know, central tensions and conflicts and stuff. Largely derived from a lot of Matt Colville videos, with hopefully enough of our own input that is worth listening to us.
Yeah, well, that kind of stuff has been like on my mind, because I know for me it was hard to get my head around. Like I definitely like that kind of I guess like reasons for governments to do things, right? That kind of like why people go to war and like all that kind of stuff. It's like that's not like I want to put it in my world, because I want my world to be you know, a little bit more alive and real. But also I don't think I have the narrative capacity for it. Like if anything, like, you know, your game is kind of like a movie, right? So my genre would be like action comedy, right? Like I don't typically have like a politically charged game so much, but I still want to try for it and make it a little bit real and make those navigating those waters if players want to, so they can, you know, they can find it. Quite often I just think of the explosions and then I have to realize, okay, why are we having these explosions?
Why explosions? Yeah, I think I have a similar issue in that I have wanted to lead into the politics of my game, particularly with like rulership and things like that and how it's supposed to be structured, because my notes on it right now are pretty vague. And my issue for me is that like I feel like I have a good canvas for it. I just haven't painted it out. Like I have a space, I have places, I have like border lines and things like that, but I haven't really established what those mean now, in terms of like my game's timeline. I haven't really established like why are things the way they are right now, other than the surface level stuff. Like I have names of people, you know, but I haven't really spoken to what that means, what their relationships with each other are. And I kind of want to like start doing more of that personally, even just to have it as like a backdrop, so that when it comes up, I can lean on that information. But for me, I kind of feel like I have the space there. I just haven't really filled it with anything, and I kind of want to do that.
Yeah, for sure. Like I think it's not necessary for a backdrop, because like, you know, there's tons of other things like lore and like magic and like bad guys and all that kind of stuff to fill your world with plenty of stuff that your players will never actually care about, like what the king is trying to pull off, right? But I think it would be like, you know, you want a little bit of that to kind of make sense. You want a little bit of that kind of spice. You never want to just like, you know, you want to add a little bit of everything into your game. I think that makes like a good round game, right? So having a little bit of political intrigue, like maybe for like a chapter or like even just like an episode, which is like, you know, whatever a session or adventure is, I think it'll be cool for your players, and it'll change up the general like go here, kill bad guy, leave with loot kind of thing. I mean, you probably end up doing the same thing, but instead of like being a goblin, it's like some noble asshole, and you feel good about it.
Yeah. And again, like it's not necessary, but it does sort of add that extra dimension of your world feeling alive. You know, those extra details that if they come up, it makes, again, your world feel more lived in, because it has something a actual real place would have.
Yeah, and I think it also gives like, you know, NPCs something to talk about instead of just like whatever's immediately happening to them, right? Like now you can align their attitudes towards what the king's doing, right? It's like, to be fair, in the real life, we care about what our government's doing, and like, you know, people talk about like, oh yeah, they're putting in a new road somewhere. It's like, traffic sucks or whatever, right? Because of the construction. That's all like government stuff. So it's like, you know, heck, maybe your kingdom was trying to put in a central road, and then like they're getting attacked by, I don't know, princesses, and you just have to be like, damn those princesses. Keep taking our dragons.
These wandering warrior princesses. Yeah, like I just played Skyrim this week, and there is a whole lot of like incidental dialogue that will inform you about the world as you travel. You learn so much just from listening to what people are saying. I think, again, that's a thing that makes the world feel more alive. And it can also, you know, be a good way to deliver on side quests.
Yeah, because like,
so
you know,
yep.
Oh no, go ahead, go ahead. Let's get
Oh
into
no,
it.
I was just gonna ask how we wanted to approach the topic. If you have an actual thing to say, go ahead.
Oh shit! Like no, I was just gonna continue a little bit, but let's try and figure this out, because, man, like this all spawned because I kind of we're planning on obviously finishing our Lancer our Lancer campaign on stream. So like I told my players I'm on the hook for 12 license levels, right, which is the max you can be in Lancer, right? So I want to get them to license level 12 and have like their final mission be cool. So it's like I kind of want to, like, so far I've kind of just done like episodic adventures, really kind of anything that they've done, it's been like in its own, like as soon as the mission is finished, it's like over, right? Like they never really have to, there's no callbacks to the last one, right? So I kind of want to transition, well, the end of this mission would be like season 1, and then like season 2 would be more of like a political situation, because Lancer, because of the scope of it, and the big, corporate states and Union as being like this big, hegemony of like all of humanity, and like all this bureaucracy everywhere, and like, and like war, right? Like war is a government thing, right? It's like lots of people, lots of money, lots of like, economics involved, and I want to get more into the political situation in Lancer, and kind of bring that forward in my game. So I had to figure out how politics worked a little bit, or at least like how politics would work in like a narrative setting, right? Like where's the drama? Like why is the drama happening? Like, who are the powers? Like what do they want? And then my brain blew up for like a second, because it's like that's too many moving pieces for me, right?
Right.
And like I felt like I didn't want to be like, contrived or derivative or whatever.
Well, nothing wrong with that.
That's true.
I think what some good advice is from, and we should probably link to a couple of these below, Matt Coville's politics videos. One piece of advice that I got from them that I'm probably going to apply going forward, or at least find a way to, is to have some sort of central tension or central conflict that sort of gives like the different factions an axis to rotate around. Sort of how they feel about this particular subject or this particular incident or particular resource or something like that. Like just some sort of something that you can lean on. And this is a good thing for like RPG plots in general, is if you have something you can lean on, some major like singular sentence that you can lean on, it's easier to sort of write things in, like character motivations as they relate to this particular thing. Or ideas or faction ideologies as they relate to this particular thing. Like, is there a particular war going on? Is there a particular power source or something that's only specifically available in some way? Like, is there something that would create political tension? And can you reduce that into one specific, like, conflict? And I found that was like really great advice. I think that might be a way to sort of like simplify the approach to politics. Like, is there one particular thing going on? And then what can you derive from that, as opposed to like spinning up a bunch of plates and then having to keep them all rotating. Like, it's still a bunch of plates, but they're at least all on one stick. If that's I don't know if that's easier in real life, but that seems like easier in the metaphor.
Sounds pretty hard, Calvin, either way you put it. It's like a disaster waiting to happen. It's all that's going to fall down on you. But, exactly, right? Like having that kind of like two sides of the coin, like which side are you on or whatever, that line in the sand. It's like parties can fall wherever they want. Parties could also just like not care about the conflict, but they're still being affected by it and still have opinions on it, but like they don't have sides. They could be playing both sides too, right? That's the thing about it. Like anyone could be, because it could just be like, I'm profiting from this conflict, but I don't really care which way it goes, or like I'm in the middle of this battle, but like whoever wins doesn't really, like the leader, what they're fighting for doesn't really affect me, or I'm just fighting because I happen to live here, I have to, or things like that. Yeah, and it gives you another reason to care about NPCs, I think, because like maybe in your game there's just like the players obviously like, you know, pulling a little bit from like Mass Effect or Skyrim or whatever, like you get yourselves in these highly charged political situations, and for some reason NPCs are like, so what do you think we should do? right. It's like, you know, that kind of cool situations where you get to either like make the lives of NPCs better or worse, or maybe you don't know what the right call is, right? And you get to see that kind of play out. I know there's a lot of pressure, and people play these games for like to enjoy it and just kind of chill out. So you don't do it if you don't want to, or that's not the game you're trying to play, right? But you know, it is kind of fun to be in those high stakes negotiations, right? I remember playing spoilers for Wallflower, I guess, a little bit, but like there's some ramifications of actions that like you choose, and it's like it weighed heavily when I was playing through it. It weighed very heavily on me, but that's what kind of like what I liked about it. Every time we started the game, I was excited to play, but I was also very stressed out because it felt like these people's lives were literally like on the line, and if I didn't make the right decision as like a player, or we didn't do a mission correctly or failed or something, like there's like people's lives could be lost. I know it's like fictional, but it's like I liked everybody, right? Like right. I feel bad for these people. It's like, you know, so it was motivating. You had that like character motivation. Like it was I played as a union auxiliary, so I felt like, you know, it was my duty to like really truly help these people, because, you know, these guys were just off on their own, and bad stuff started happening, and then like it just you know went off the deep end on these people, and we were kind of stuck, and it was a little bit Union's fault, I would say. So I've also felt like we should probably fix this. But you know, team leader types and all. That character didn't make it out though. He didn't make it to the end. So sad. But so he had a protege, and you know, it passed on. It was good.
The benefit of a sidekick.
Yeah. They get to be the main character. It was actually really good because I know a couple of us died, and shoehorning new characters is always kind of hard, but it was really easy if you had a sidekick. So, you know, go find an NPC friend and make him your sidekick, and then like if your character dies, you could just play as them, and like the story won't change that bad.
Yeah,
right? It won't be so jarring as a shift.
That's a good tip for superhero games.
You just become a little edgier. You're like, my master died, or my senpai. You killed my senpai.
So, what is your, like, for you then, like, what is your process for, like, building the politics in a Lancer game, or, like, are you still working on that? I'm just wondering, like, where your head is at, or if this is a thing that you literally just thought of, and you only have, like, napkin notes at this point.
Well, I moved my napkin notes to my journals, so now it's a little bit better. My journal's a hot mess.
Okay.
But yeah, well, it was mostly just like, I think it was the Inciting Incident, right? It was like first it was like what are the sides, and then what would actually start the chain reaction of like the situation devolving, because like, you know, like Michael will bring up a good point where like most times everybody knew that you know, war is coming, right? Like everybody like obviously was like, nah man, like it's never just sudden and like, oh god, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's like, nah man, like the tension is high.
There was
right?
a book he referred to, the name of it escapes me, but it essentially made the statement that the default position of different like political like factions would be war, because of how frequent and how common it is, how rare it is to find like several years of there not being war of some kind somewhere, which led to one of the more interesting questions of that video, which is like, if there is peace in your campaign, why? Because it usually means that there is someone somewhere who is working very hard to maintain that peace, either by playing people off of each other or using some other sort of political pressures.
Yeah.
Like it's very
like,
delicate.
Right, and like because like, you know, general Fantasyland setting, right? Like war's not apocalyptic 100%, right? It doesn't have to be, because like the modern notion of like mobilizing an entire country for war is very new, like super duper new. Like most of human history is like not that crazy of a scale, right? So, you know, I mean, that's not totally true for Lancer, except like you can, because like, you know, I mean, like everybody has access to print high yield ammunitions for free in their basement now. Because of the way printers work. But you know, in your fantasy setting, like it doesn't have to be all so terrible. But yeah, it's like, where were we? I like lost my. I went on a tangent.
Well, yeah, I was just wondering like where are you starting? At least if you want to talk about the Lancer game, I don't know if you want to spoil anything, but like, what is your approach for adding, you know, politics to it? Like, what are you going for first? Just the different sides, establishing like what side everyone is on, or are you looking at an inciting incident?
Well, for me, it's like, yeah, it's the inciting incident. It's like, how do I get the players to show up and possibly deal, or like they have to, I think like the coolest part is like making the decisions in those hot situations, right? It's like, what side do you want to help out? Because that's what players do. They show up, they're heroes, they save people. But if both sides have a point who are kind of like a little bit right, or have like a little bit of rights, it's like, who are you the hero for, right?
Yes.
Because obviously the other side is going to be the villains, or do they have to be? Do you just play both sides? How are you going to walk that rope, right? So it's like, but you have to have the conflict start. Like I want my players to be like, they show up and possibly in their actions, right, doing something will be involved with the inciting incident, and then it'll pull them right into the action. And now, you know, political leaders would be like, or like all of like the people in charge would be like, why were you there at this exact time where this tragedy happened, right? You know what I mean? Like all of a sudden you don't have to shoehorn why they're important. They were literally there. Right? Actually, Steven, my very first DM, did that for one of our campaigns. It was, I think it was, we were there for, it was a ceremony. It was like a celebration for the king. I think it was like the king's birthday or something like that, right? Or crowning, or I don't remember what it was. But there was an assassination attempt on the king. And our characters were just in the crowd. So obviously being heroes, we leapt into action and stopped it. But then, you know, we found out that like the people who were attacking us were, or like attacking the kingdom, were just like some locals that lived in the forest that didn't like the fact that the king was invading into the forest. That was like, that's a pretty good political situation right there, right? It's like, but the forest taking that land would be good for the kingdom, because the kingdom needs space to expand. But then you're invading other people's territory and like all that kind of stuff, right? But assassinating a king is never a good idea. Adventurers will show up and stop you.
Of course, as they do. Those pesky adventurers.
But then, exactly, right? But then, like, you know, all of the king's men and like the king themselves were like, oh, thank you for helping us, right? Because you literally saved my life. Would you like a job? You're obviously capable. And then we were then, you know, inducted into the kingdom, into like I guess basically the government, because, you know, we proved ourselves. And then that was our thing for the entire campaign, was like us working for this kingdom as like government agents. And like when we're back in kingdom, like doing downtime stuff, we had like positions. Well, not really positions. I mean, I had a job, and Corey's character had a job, and then one of our other friends ran like an insane asylum because he was a cleric of one of those, you know, tentacle monsters. So yeah, you know, one of those. He was doing his own thing. But yeah, you know, it was cool because, you know, we just had jobs outside of just being, you know, murder hobos. We had responsibilities, which, I mean, if it's cool, if you want that kind of thing. Again, I don't want to tell people that just kind of hanging out and killing monsters is bad, because, you know, dude, I love that too. But if you want a little bit of complexity, like that's like a good way to do it. But yeah, so that's what I did for I guess season 2. You'll find out once we start streaming season 2. I tried to narrow that down, and then kind of like broaden the scopes a little bit, being like, who are these people? Why are they important? You know, and then it's like, okay, what are their goals here? Like what's gonna go? And then I planned out, I think, enough. Like, I haven't figured out the ending of this because I kind of wanted to wait and see what the players do, right? Like, they have input as well into the game, and I want to see what they choose to work on, right? Like, what side they're on, and then I'll figure out what the ending of season 2 would be like. So, yeah. I think most games I run, or most campaigns I run, I have no clue what the ending's gonna be, like, at all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you could know it, like, well enough to plan it at any level. Some DMs out there, like, they're like, I know what my ending is going to be like. I want to figure out how to get there, right? But for me, it's like, I want to see what my players do, like, you know. I mean, the whole campaign ending, I mean, I guess it depends. Like, if someone is, like, writing a adventure module or something, they have to have some idea of what the ending will be. But gosh, I don't know how someone homebrewing something could figure out, like, well, I mean, I guess I can get, like, you want to figure out where you want the players to get to, but I mean, I don't know if I feel safe making those kinds of assumptions.
Yeah, exactly, right. You're like, it's like constantly a moving target, you know what I mean? Like, you might think where they're going to end up, and then you're like, shit, I got to shift it over here. And then, like, as you go closer to the end, you're literally just trying to keep up with the players and their decisions, because, you know, you don't want your players to, like, kind of go off and, like, you know, veer off from not like the planned script, but it's like you're also trying to keep, like, a cohesive narrative, right? So it's like, you know, you want to have the narrative kind of lean in the direction that they want to go, because it feels good, because then now they're telling their own story, right? And you know, like, at the ending of that campaign, if you choose to run it for another group, they will veer off the narrative whichever direction they want to go, right? So, like, you know, having that kind of little bit of flexibility is good, I think.
Yeah. So, there was one particular thing that just stood out to me from those videos, and it's, again, the concept of, like, peace in your campaign. For me personally, that's one of the things I want to work on, because I have established, like, there's different regions and stuff with different people in charge of them, but they're all sort of, like, part of a singular collective. And there's largely peace between the regions, but I don't know if I really fully explored why. I think I do have, like, multiple incidents of some major thing happens to this particular, like, entire world space that I'm working with, the setting space. And it requires people to work together. I have, like, at least 3 of those, because I guess it's a trope that I really like. But they all took place, like, in the past in regards to, like, the game worlds, and I guess I never really explained, like, why tensions didn't flare up again in the, like, decades since the last time that happened. So I don't know if that's something you consider in maybe your Pathfinder world as well, like, if there is peace in particular regions, like, why is that? Or more so, like, why is there a conflict going on? Even if it's a very likely outcome of different tensions, like, what causes it? I don't know if that's something you've also had to think about.
Oh, for sure, man. Like, if you plan, like, an entire world with, like, you know, like, fantasy Rome, fantasy Japan, and be like, why are these people fantasy this and fantasy that analogs, right? Like, all these cultures and stuff like that. Like, why aren't they, like, because they're so different, and that's the thing, right? It's like our modern notions of, like a lot of times it's like, I think the Macro videos went into this, but it's like fear, and, like, you know, they don't want to be subjugated, they don't want their culture being erased, overtaken by, like, another culture, right? So it's like, why are these people go to war? Why are these people even different in the first place, right? And you know, people with similar cultures, like, they don't tend to fight too often, like, actually, like, most times they could come to an agreement, unless there's some other thing going on with, like, it's a lot easier, at least, to, like, facilitate trade, they probably have the same amount of, like, festivals and celebrations and religion, like, all that kind of stuff. Like, a lot of times they mesh. But if things are really drastically different, or in the case of, like, fantasy world, like, races, right? Like, they're not even the same species. Right? Finding common ground is actually kind of difficult. And it takes a lot of effort to do it. But yeah, so an example I have, which I don't know if any of my players like actually know this, right? So, hey, spoilers, I guess, from our world, but you guys will know eventually, or you could just forget it. I forget things often. So, like, there's one section called Uranus, which is like our human European kingdom analog, right?
Right.
So Uranus, they had a king of Uranus, but that king and all of his family died, and the kingdom themselves now split down to a bunch of duchies, right? Like the land has not been, there's no centralized, like the power of the king is no longer there, so it goes down to the next level of judiciary where it's like the dukes and duchesses or whatever, right? So they are in charge of the land because they have the army to defend it, so they get to, you know, do the taxes and try to keep people safe and all that kind of fun stuff of ruling kingdoms, right? That's like, you know, that's kind of mostly what kingdoms are. It's like roads, trying not to get invaded, and making sure people don't starve, right? If you could figure that out, you're pretty good. Like you're good.
The basics, yeah.
Yeah, right. Check Rome. If every time Rome couldn't do one of those things, it's like bad. Like they fucked up. But then, like, so then there's directly north of it is like the Elven kingdoms, right? It's like this big forest, right? And there was a human elven war, and which resulted in the death of the king, right? So the people in Uranus don't like the elves, but they don't actually know, like a lot of them don't know that was only like one elven city-state. The rest of the elves don't really have a problem with them. So, you know, there's a lot of like tension there. But the reason why, as well, is that the where the king, like the king's castle was and all of the actual capital of Uranus was, it's now like this crazy blighted Cthulhu-esque mess that's there. And you know, like the closer you go to it, the worse it is, right? Like literally, like the closer you get to the capital, the more likely you're going to be eaten by a tentacle monster, right? Because during the war, the humans were actually winning versus the Elven Kingdom directly in north. Like I think it's called Thalon Sanctum. So Thalon Sanctum was actually going to lose the war, but they had like basically like a nuke. They had the ability to, you know, nuke the capital, and the humans couldn't do anything about it. So they were literally like being, like, I think Thalon Sanctum was being like actually sieged at that point, and they're like, well, press the nuke button, right? And ripped open like a portal to a horrible dimension, and lots of bad things spilled out directly at our capital and started spilling out all over the place. So that caused like the army to retreat, because now like their homeland is being invaded by like demons and tentacles. But the problem is that because the elves did that, Thalon Sanctum did that, that also caused a rip in like dimensions in their capital, right? So now in the very, very deepest, darkest depths of Thalon Sanctum, there's an ongoing war to literally try and seal off the tentacle monsters invading there, while back at, you know, in Uranus, there's like an ongoing crusade to try and reclaim the capital because a bunch of tentacle monsters are there. And now that's why both sides aren't at war with each other, because they're too busy, right? Like everything's so fucked up on both sides of them that they can't divert resources to go deal with it.
Yeah, they're more focused on like their own literal survival.
Right, but if one person, if someone's able to claim the throne, like they're gonna like pivot. Or if Thalon Sanctum figures out their shit, like they're gonna pivot, because that means the other side is like now will be flanked, right? They're trying to deal with stuff like on their end and being invaded at the same time. Like they'll just lose. Mm-hmm. So that's why I keep those people in check, for sure. Right. So that's like a highly, like, it's like a kind of like a weird kind of political charge situation. And I did that a lot. I basically like took that idea of like people separating, like why is there a cultural divide, or like why is there like a divide, and then why can't they fight each other again, right? It's like, why can't they just regroup and do it? I did that with the dwarves. I don't think I did that with every single person, but you know, that's kind of the idea. Yeah. I mean, I could go on and on about like what I thought about my world. I did a long time kind of fiddling with it, and then just stopped like cold turkey. And then I'm like, I don't know, it's probably good enough. Like I'll figure out the rest of it later. But okay, as well. Okay, so this also kind of plays into why. My world has the pirate campaign with you and Payne and Rebecca and my wife, and then there's the Inyan game with you again, Calvin, lucky you, and like Corey and Joel and all those guys. So Inyan is this newly discovered land that was surrounded by this basically like a wall of clouds and thunderstorms, but someone was able to navigate their way to it. And now there's like a new settlement where everyone's trying to go there and basically claim the land, right? But the reason why the Duchess of Lahurst, which is a duchy inside of Duranus, funded this whole expedition is because she wants out, right? Like she's the closest duchy to the blighted kingland, right? And like every year the blight just gets more and more. So her father, right? The previous duke was he got killed in the Crusades to try and retake Kingland, right? And she's like, that was so stupid. We should just try and find somewhere else to live, right? And even the people from Duranus, they're not from there, right? They're actually from my fantasy Rome analog. They were like literally like an expedition. Rome was like, wow, let's go find this thing. And because like the way that the world works, there's this like really long like chain of like islands and sea. So they sail across that, got up there, but because they're so far apart and like there's like this giant dwarven mountain in the way, they culturally changed. They culturally went different. And then, they separated. They wanted to separate from themselves, so they did. So Duchess, what's her name? The Duchess now is like, yo, let's just find somewhere else to colonize and then just move. And then that's why Inyan exists, and that's why the whole campaign of Pathfinders of Inyan exists. Yeah, so that's. By the way, I worked backwards from here. I was like, yo, it'd be cool if everybody was rediscovering this new land, and then I was like, shit, I need a reason for them to do that, and then I just like from that point, I just literally just like inched my way further and further and further back into history to figure it out because again I can't think of all those moving pieces all at once, so I had to start from one place and kind of branch out.
I think again that's kind of the big difference in how we made our individual like homebrew worlds, because again you started with like the things that were in it and then had to work back from that as for reasons for things and what's there and why it's there and stuff like that. I started from the map and then I was like, okay, I'll put something here and here. And then I just like worked like top down, basically, which I guess is sort of how we ended up in different situations. Because I feel like you have a bit of a better sense of the politics of your world, at least certainly more so than I do. Because I feel like I'm still filling that in. For you, it seems more like you put it in as the campaign needed and then built up from there. For me, it's just like completely incidental to the campaign. Like it was always more of a backdrop for me.
Yeah.
Which I guess is another thing we can talk about. Like, yep.
For sure, because it's like I think your campaign is like a road trip campaign, right? Like definitely, it's definitely like just we have to go from one end of the map to the other. Choose how you want to get there, right? Take as many carts as you want, man. We figured out how much
the
it
trail
costs.
we blaze.
Yeah.
Right. I was kind of wondering though how you feel about politics as like a main plot versus just like a backdrop, like world building kind of thing, because like at the end of the day, whatever you want to put in the plot of your game, it has to be something that you're able to onboard the players into. Because if the people playing aren't interested, then it's going to be less fun for them. It's going to be less fun for you because like a large chunk of the fun of the game is sort of like that back and forth. And if one side isn't feeling it, then you either have to compromise or you have to find something else that works for both of you. Let's be clear to all the newer GMs out there, people who haven't tried it. Like, the game should be fun for the GM as well. I don't know if that's an obvious thing, but it is something I feel needs to be mentioned every now and then.
Oh yeah.
So I was kind of wondering, like. Yep.
Yeah. So it's like you have to onboard your players on that. So if you want to play a politically charged game, tell them. Like, tell your players, like, hey, I'm thinking about playing some Game of Thrones shit. So be prepared to be in like, trying to be, in negotiations with nobles and being wrapped up in this, like, the situation, right? I think telling players the kind of game that you want to play right off the bat, like maybe the game kind of transforms eventually, like slowly, right? But it's like you tell them the idea. It's like it's kind of like again, it's like this medium, this game that we play. It's more, I think it's more akin to like a movie or a book or some sort of other media that you're engaged with, right? So it's like the cover of your book. Like what is the cover of your adventure? It's like, or your campaign. It's like, I want to remake Game of Thrones with this, you can talk to nobles and find, do all that kind of stuff and wage war and all that kind of stuff. But if you don't, you want to play like, I don't know, Aladdin, right? You're just
right.
like a dude trying to find some cool shit and marry a princess, then like tell them, right? It's like, I think like telling your players up front of like what kind of game you want to play is the best way to start, like especially for a political game, because then it's like it depends what kind of character, right? Because it's like, yeah, it would be, you could play, I still think you can play any character in any game. Like I don't want to tell my players like, yeah, you can't do that, but you still want to like have the right characters for the right moments. Like I don't know, it's like I don't even know any, I don't even watch any political movies, but it'd be like if like Rambo was like trying to negotiate in the Oval Office with somebody or something like that, right? Like why would he be there? Yeah. Right? Why would this murder killing machine be trying to be a spy, right? like he's not, that's not what he's good at, right? Let Rambo go kill a bunch of things, right? That's what he's good at. That's what people want to see Rambo do. They don't really want to see Rambo like in a board meeting or something, negotiating stuff or whatever, or going to a ball. I mean, maybe some people want to do that. I think it'd be some good comedy moments with a Rambo character at like a ball or something, trying to interact with the upper echelon of society. That's some slapstick comedy right there. But
delicate negotiations about the use of miniguns. Exactly
right. For like the for the entire campaign, that would suck.
Yeah,
that would suck for Rambo. It's the same thing with the suave spy. If there's no spying to be done, like don't play a spy, right? Like I don't want you to not have fun with your character and feel good that like you're utilizing all of your cool abilities, because that's the whole point, right? You're trying to get into that character's thing and do the cool thing that your character wants to do. I don't want you to not do that as like a DM. I want all my players to feel special and fun, and we're having a good time together, right? So tell your players up front if you're gonna do some weird spy shit, so they can be excited about it. Right?
Yeah, like you definitely, like if you know your game is gonna focus on one specific conceit, whether it's politics or just monster slaying or stealth, like you want people to know that, because you want them to still have fun and feel effective in whatever situation they're in. Like, yeah, any character can be effective anywhere, just at different let's just say different levels. And if your game is going to have like a bunch of different things, then that's fine. But if you know for sure, like you want to play a game that will specifically focus on X, Y, or Z, if you let people know that, they can more easily like make a character that fits that situation. Like for example, our friend Rebecca, like we knew, she told us she wanted to run a game sort of placed in this fantasy high school. So when it came to making character creation, we were leading sort of like on those tropes of like those high school story tropes. Like, the jock student, the goth student, the troublemaker, the nerd, that kind of thing. Like, that's sort of more of what we were leaning into, as opposed to like traditional fantasy tropes.
I would argue that was the first thing we did. We're like, what genre of like high school student or like theme of high school student we're going to play, right? That was the first thing we talked about. And then we were like, okay, then after that was like, okay, then what fantasy thing are we gonna be, right?
Yeah, that was, I think that was literally it. We were like, well, what stereotype, what trope are we gonna be, and then what class fits that, as opposed to the normal like, oh, what class do I want to play?
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, you could also do that for any game. Like, I think that, well, for a Lancer, my first thing was like, what kind of character I kind of want to be. I wanted to be like a dude who's like a team leader and who protects, who like will throw himself in front of his friends to, don't shoot my friends, shoot me kind of guy, right?
Right.
So then I was like, okay, then after that, the choices I chose were like, okay, how do I make my mech talents kind of, you should do that, right? and picking leader, picking stuff that are able to do Overwatch, be able to like get and provide cover, like what licenses I'm going to take. I think I took like Tortuga, so I can like be used as like hard cover and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's so. I don't know. This is a little off topic from what we were talking about, but that's one of the interesting things about character creation and how different people approach it differently. Whether you start from like, okay, I have this idea for a character, what do I put on them, like from what's available in the game to facilitate how that works, versus like, oh, I want to try this specific game mechanic, and then I'll make a personality around that game mechanic. Like if you start with personality first or with the game first. Like either your class or your mech parts or whatever first.
Yeah.
Both of which are valid. It just depends on how you want to lay out that character.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, I don't do it. I do it depending on the situation or like my ideas. It's like sometimes it's like, oh, this is a cool interaction I have mechanically. Let's use this. I want to try this out for a character. Like right now we're playing in Shaka's game, his Lancer game that he's running for us. Or his mission. And I was playing Duke, and Duke is like a character that mostly was spawned for mechanical purposes. And then I was like, okay, I just got to figure out a pilot to pilot this. And I was like, oh yeah, I got this character who has this kind of attitude where he's like, he definitely wants to lead from the front. He wants to be the first in the fray. He wants to do it. So then but mechanically I was like, yo, this thing goes so fast, I want to do this. I want to zip around the map like a madman. So that's where Duke came from. This Duke anyway. I mean, all of my Dukes are like that. Spoiler, Duke's a clone of a bunch. Duke's one of many clones of one guy called Duke, or is one dude with a call sign Duke. So they're all Dukes. Which I'm afraid of the DM who's like, you have to fight Duke now, and it's like, oh, it's Duke number 4, but I'm Duke number 6.
You kind of play in the same person's like 2 different campaigns though.
Yeah, which is pretty fun. Which is I mean, I think it's hilarious. I think I'll keep playing Duke every time I play a new campaign. It's kind of fun. I'll just keep tweaking the character to be like slightly different, but they're basically the same. They all have to pilot the Nelson. So
you will then eventually end up having to play against him. But yeah, like for me, because I'm not like fully well rounded in like what all the different like frames and stuff do in Lancer. My thing was always like, well, I want to make a grappler. Okay, what does that? I want to make a sniper. What does that? And then I would work from there because I knew the kind of character I wanted. Until I know all the things about Lancer, I kind of have to start with like, well, what kind of character do I want? Okay, and then how do I build that?
Yeah, well, you could do that for. Well, I think that's a good approach for anything, because you kind of want the general idea and then you get the parts moving, right? So it's like, I mean, for politics, kingdoms, all that kind of stuff, like you just kind of figure out a good way to do it is like really find real world analogs, right? History will be crazier than anything that you can come up with on your own, like actually, because there's like the amount of coincidences and random rolls of the dice, rolls of the universe that happen to shape our world that we currently live in it's kind of bonkers.
Yeah.
Right. So getting like real world analogs is a really good way of trying to fit that political landscape, trying to fit like even characters and stuff like that, trying to get that. It's like getting the vibe of it's pretty cool. Or even doesn't have to be like history, it could just be like a movie, right? Or like a book or anything like that.
Yeah. But like, movies and books have to follow certain rules of fiction and be believable. With real world history, it's just like, and like it's a great way to learn for politics too, like studying certain tensions that arose at certain times, why some people would be allied with others, how peace was kept in a certain region, and who was out there, doing it, who was making the effort to keep peace in certain areas, and what happened when they were no longer in power. When you went from that sort of like more steady position, like what incited. It feels reductive to call incidents in history like inciting incidents. But if you want to examine it from the perspective of a writer or a GM, what was the inciting incident there and how did that change things? and how can you adapt that to the setting that you find yourself in?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, to be fair, like when how do I pronounce this name? In the pirate campaign, when I burnt down that elven city, right? Ilan Hill. Yes, I know why I make up names that I can't pronounce all the time. Because I'm paid to look cool.
yeah, exactly. I have a place that I like never pronounce right. Like, but it looks cool. It's got an A and an E next to each other.
Oh wait, no, sorry. Ilan Hill's another place. It's Alinea. Right. So when Alinea got burnt down by the bad guy of the campaign, that's an inciting incident, man. Like lots of people, like it hasn't caught up yet, but like everybody knows about it, and everyone's like, "Oh shit!" Like, right? And it definitely has. There's lots of things in motion now that, you know, the players may or may not get involved in. Like I said, I'm always down for that game. I love that group of players to just kind of like run off and do their own thing, because to be honest with you, that's kind of what I want to do. I want to like go have fun, do something else instead of actually doing my campaign for some reason. I don't know why. But yeah, you know, if as soon as you go a little bit closer to that place, everyone's gonna be like, "Hey man, did you hear that place burnt down?" Like, what happened there, right?
Who knows what happened? Certainly nothing to do with us.
Yeah, you know, it's like a whole So you know, and there's refugees involved. That place was also surrounded by like a forest full of demons too. So you know, they're like, "Oh sweet, the place is burnt down. We can finally just go in there."
It's ours now.
Man. Yeah, you know, it's cool. It's probably like a little bit of resistance in that place. Yeah, that was cool. I do regret burning down that place. I think I burnt that place down a little bit too soon. We probably should have spent a little bit more time there. But I was a little bit too excited for the explosions, and I kind of rushed things a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it still was like fun, so.
For sure.
Okay, what else can we say about politics in games, just to revert back to the original point of this episode? Like, I guess we could talk about maybe consequences of certain things, or I don't know, did you have a topic you wanted to lean into?
Well, I mean, also too, right? Like the nobility, like the reason why the nobility was a thing in real world was because those people had armies, and armies were really good at patrolling stuff, right? Keeping roads safe, facilitating trade, all that kind of stuff, right? Patrolling your borders so people don't attack your village, right? Like, you know, when an invading army in those kind of those days, like if they found your village, like your village was toast, right? And you're just a simple farmer, like, and these dudes had like armor and swords and fire to set your farmhouse on fire, and they just want your stuff because those guys are traveling very far from their farms and are probably starving.
Yeah.
And, you know, and he's just looking for like honestly, like the whole crusades and armies and stuff like that back then, they were basically just like hordes of you know, of bandits with a little bit of more reason than, you know, a little bit of quote unquote reason for banditry, right?
Yeah.
You know, like reclaiming the Holy Land was literally go there and take their stuff, like, and then get the clout for it from the Pope at the time, right? So, you know, if you went there and took a piece away from, you know, medieval like Israel, right? Then it's like, you know, or any of those places down there, then it's like, yeah, dude, you're super cool. You're a noble now. Good job, right? Like, but also they did a lot of bad things. People did a lot of bad things to a lot of people that didn't deserve it. They're literally just living their lives on their farms, right? But so that's why kingdoms exist, and that's why people are like pay taxes so they can pay the army so they can keep you safe. So that kind of idea of like, why is it hard to travel the lands of your world? Why, like, you know, why is there goblins and stuff? Because, like, you know, a good running kingdom would just do that. Is it, you know, is it just like the kingdom is like whatever the setting that you're currently playing in or the region, is it just so far out there into the boonies that like there's no point? Like maybe as like players get closer to the capital, there's like less likely chance of them getting like attacked, right? Like actually, right. Because that's the thing, right? Like as soon as like bandits and goblins and those kind of stuff, like the more the places discover and the more there's roads and like actual proper civilization, there's less places for those things to hide and not be dealt with, right? It's very easy for like a government to not care about the border towns, right? Because it's like, well, those people don't contribute as much, or we have more pressing issues or whatever, right? You could have that reason to be like, why are you guys the heroes of this town? Why isn't it just like the town guard? Or is there even a town guard? Like maybe they can't be a town guard because the town literally can't afford it, right? It's just whoever's there. Or it's like, oh, like, why hasn't the king done anything about the dragon that's on his property, right?
Right.
That dragon will probably go kill the king because it's like, I don't want people to try and kill me. I'm just going to kill their ruler and then just be done with it, right? Like, I think more dragons should eat more kings because to be fair, I think the dragon is more like a dragon is like the idea of like a big bad guy. Why isn't your big bad guy trying to not be the king of his own little big bad guy world, right? Like with your boy, the wyvern guy, right? Yeah. Like as the players slowly fucked up and like didn't deal with the problem or whatever, right? He grew in power and like he was very much like, like pushing out his reach, gathering more kobolds, getting more resources, literally getting tougher, right? Yeah. As like a bad guy, like have your big bad guys do that, like, have them interact with, like, that's a good way, because then it's like, every town that you went to, everything was like talking about it, right? There was like lots of people gearing up to try and kill this thing, except your boys showed up and was like, I dealt with it, don't worry. Yeah, right. Like,
yeah, that sort of it really gave me like a sort of central conflict for people to talk about, because then there was like a subject that I could just lean into within that region that everyone was talking about, like everyone had to deal with it. And the perspective on it was largely the same. We don't want to be killed by a wyvern, but it gave me that major plot point to work with, and it's sort of the thing that I kind of want to have more of, because it's another tool in the box to make life easier for a GM.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that your game specifically, but you could have lots of plot points where if the players didn't deal with, like, they could just grow and be a problem. Bad guys themselves, like if you have like your bad guy has minions, why aren't there minions going out and getting more minions and getting more loot and getting more stuff and just getting more and more and more? I mean, like, greed is a very good bad guy motivation, right? Like dragons especially. I mean, this game's called Dungeons and Dragons, right? Like, well, have those guys be, well, not this game, but like, you know what I mean. Like,
I know what you mean.
You should have dragons push out their power.
You kind of brought up an interesting thing that I was wondering about, like the relation of the ruling class towards like the lower, like the average person, and the relation like towards player characters. Like I was just thinking, like, what does a person on the ground care who the king is, so long as nothing specifically changes for them? Does it really matter for them?
But it does. Like, I think Koval brings up a good point in his things, because like the death of a good king brings like all sorts of chaos, right? There's like the power vacuum, right? The power vacuum is like a really prime place to have a bunch of crazy shit happen, right? There's a reason why, like, there's a reason why, like, Rome became an empire, right? Had an emperor, because like the Senate sucked. Like, they were too bureaucratic, but having a one central power have action to be like, do this, right, was effective, and people kind of want that, right? People like, if things are bad, people will lean towards a strong leader to fix it, because they want things to get resolved as soon as possible, and you can't do that with squabbling, right? So go try and kill your king in your game, and then watch everybody scramble, and that's why there's bandits on the road, right? Like, why are these bandits here, and why isn't like somebody like an army show up to weed them out, right? Like, obviously it's not profitable for the kingdom and the king if all of their merchants get attacked all the time, or like their citizens are on fire, like their stuff is on fire all the time and stolen, because that stuff is not going towards you, right? There's also that selfish thing, right? Like, kings want their taxes. So if the peasants literally can't pay them because they're on fire and they can't produce grain or whatever, then like, how are you supposed to get money out of them or like get your dues, right?
Right.
So you sick the army on those goddamn bandits, or make those bandits pay you. That's also a good thing. That's also a plot, right? It's like, ooh, maybe there's another noble trying to, is actually letting the bandits kind of roam around their area and do whatever because the bandits are already paying him off, so he doesn't care, right?
He gets his money either way.
Exactly. And then like then it's like, oh, you find that out, and then you bring it to the king, but the noble's like, oh, these rat catchers, what do you believe, right? Whatever, right? And there's some political intrigue, and then there's a good guy, and the good guy's like, yo, let's go expose this ass, and then you go in some like, some spy stuff, and you get him caught, and there's like cool like Ace Attorney courtroom moment where it's like the noble, the bad guy noble, the good guy noble, and like, I don't know, your party, and then you're like, objection, like, here's the evidence. And then the king's like, like, you know what I mean? Like,
oh, the king is the judge. There should be more Phoenix Wright in fantasy games.
I think so. I think we need it. Right? Like,
it's a perfect name for a fantasy hero. So
yeah. So that's some cool politics right there for you folks. Just take that. Just play Phoenix Wright and just make that into elves or whatever.
I mean, it's probably better to play Phoenix Wright and use that for a mystery game, but using it for politics is also awesome. And yeah, I think there's so much you can do with that when you sort of lean into, if you have something with two sides on it. If you're able to make both sides sound right in those kind of incidents, I think that's also an interesting thing to touch on with politics, at least as they are in regards to RPG games. Do we have anything else we want to say on them? I feel like we've gone over like a whole bunch of things that have hopefully given people different ideas as to what they can do with sort of the, leadership in their homebrew worlds. I don't know if there's anything else we want to cover on that.
No, I don't think so. Not anything that probably wouldn't spoil Lancer a little bit, but I guess we could talk about it again, maybe in a part 2 of like after that whole situation has been introduced to my players, and the first inciting incident goes off, and then we could like expand on it a little bit more of like, without spoiling too much stuff for you who is a player in that game, but we could do that later.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, if it's something you want to work on, just think of, what can be some inciting incidents or some, central conflicts that people can rotate around. And that will probably help you build out the motivations and ideologies of your political factions, if that's something you're considering. And also, consider focusing on the smaller scale stuff before jumping right into the larger scale things. You can also just, work down up instead of up down. And I think that's gonna work upside down. I don't know.
If you approach anything from the middle, let us know.
Also an option, yeah. And if you want to do some politics in your games, and you have some ideas, or you want to share some questions, you can also drop those below. Or any general RPG questions you might have, we can, let's try to slide them into an episode and maybe discuss them in the future. As well, if you want to see more from us, be sure to subscribe so you get notifications when we upload new episodes or when we go live. Last Friday, we went live with some Skyrim. I played a few hours of that. It was my first time playing Skyrim and my first gaming stream, and I can just tell the game is really like immediately I can tell, oh, this is why this is like the last game some people ever need to play. Like, I can tell why this is a 1,000-hour game. I don't know if that's going to be the case for us, because it's going to be weird only playing it a few hours a week. I think I might do some like smaller mini bonus streams in the week, and I'll put it up on Twitter if I do. smaller streams where maybe I'll just like do side quests or grind or something, because I want to play it. Like, I immediately want to play Skyrim. You know, I kind of spoke on how I felt about it in comparison to being a tabletop RPG player during the stream. So if you want to check that out, go watch the stream. I'll link it below. As well, I will link to our Lancer streams, which we got another coming up on Sunday, I believe we scheduled it out to be.
Sunday.
The 4th? Or, sorry, the 5th?
Yeah, Sunday the 5th. It's going to be the wrap-up to our 4th mission, I believe, right? So you guys... Or our 3rd mission?
I think it's the 3rd.
I think it's the 3rd as well. It's been so long. I'll go check my notes.
Well, whichever one it is, it was a pretty fun mission where some pirates have been trying to steal water from this sort of resort planet. So we've been out there helping them, trying to fight these pirates back. Had a lot of really awesome combats, including one with some giant sea monsters. Be sure to check out the last few episodes of our Lancer stream if you want to see more of that. The playlist of which will also be linked below. And don't forget, we're going live on Sunday the 5th at 12-ish EST. 12 or 12:30 EST. Well, we'll be going live with that mission to sort of wrap that up for now, and that'll be our first season of Lancer. And of course, every Friday at 7 p.m. EST, we'll be playing more Skyrim, which I am excited to do. Additionally, shoutouts. We've got a longer list of shoutouts now because we know so many awesome people. So for Lancer RPG, we have the Field Guide to Mfukane. I'm going to put a link to that below, written by the awesome Shaka, our friend who's been running a one-shot for us, who we got to bring onto the show again. We got to find an excuse to bring him on, so we might talk about our one-shot when that's finished off. The NPC guides for Lancer, we just discussed those last week with Celeste. They wrote some really awesome guides for running different specific kinds of NPCs in Lancer and how they sort of cooperate with each other, and even like little mini adventures that kind of focus on one particular kind of NPC. So, you know, if you want to know more about running Lancer, that is a good place to learn and a good place to start. Additionally, shout out to the Untold Stories Project, where I'm there every week on Mondays at 7 p.m. EST, playing in their Mutants and Masterminds Netherwar campaign. That's sort of based on the Netherwar adventure, but with some heavy changes to compensate for our characters, like that whole evil speedster arc, which was a lot of fun. We recently started doing some dimension hopping stuff because the previous episode was kind of heavy. So we're doing some things that are a bit lighter. We're hopping through different like dimensions based on TV shows and TV genres. We just ended up in a I don't want to spoil it, but it's gonna be really funny. I'm working on my Muppet voice.
That sounds crazy. I love it.
It is. I thought I was gonna have to deal with like the fallout of like the super dramatic episode, but we're doing like something completely different. So I have more time to work on that while also having fun. So I'm excited for that.
Cool. Well, I guess
and
that's
yeah,
the show,
I think
folks.
that's gonna be it for this week. Yeah. Check out all the links below. Be sure to ring that notification bell so you get a notification when we go live with our various things that we're going live with. And yeah, just be sure to stick around and see all the awesome stuff we have coming on the channel. Ramon, anything else you want to say before we sign off?
No, man, I think that's it for me.
All right. Well, everybody out there listening to the show, just remember to keep on winning with dice. And we'll see you next week.
See you guys.